Hello and welcome to the big picture. The 6th BRICS summit will be held for the next 2 days in Brazil. This is the first multilateral meeting that the new Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be attending. The meeting is being seen as important both for the multilateral nature of it, as well as the bilateral meeting scheduled between Modi and leaders of China, Russia, Brazil and South Africa. The last 5 summits have made important strides in pursuit of its goals. Some important decisions are expected to be taken at the summit, including the announcement of setting up the BRICS Development Bank. What will be the likely outcome of the summit? What is it that India will be looking for? And how important is this summit for Modi individually to establish himself as a world leader? We will discuss all this today with M.K. Kumar, former ambassador and foreign policy analyst, Mohan Guruswamy, economist and foreign policy analyst, Prof. Baladas, Ghoshal, senior fellow at the Center for Policy Research, and Pramit Chaudhary, foreign affairs editor, Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Kumar, this is the first multilateral meeting that Mr. Modi will be attending. Do you think his approach to all these things, how will his approach to all this be different from, say, Dr. Manmohan Singh's?
I think already there is some evidence of it, that he is building on a ground that was reached during the Manmohan Singh UPA era. The statement that Prime Minister Narendra Modi made when he left for Brazil was extremely interesting. You know, he gave primacy to the political dialogue.
Right.
That he intends to discuss issues of world peace,
right,
security, and so on. Now, there's a lot of shyness in India, traditionally, about BRICS, about viewing BRICS as a political platform. This is, to some extent, it is because of a misconception, as I see it, that the Americans might take umbrage.
Not take it right.
I said misconception. I don't think it's the case because, you know, it's a mature power. It's a great power, and they do have the self-confidence that, you know, other countries pursue their interests, their own ways, and I don't think they get upset about it. But, you know, we, sections of Indian opinion, have been, I say, ultra-sensitive about it. Now, Prime Minister Modi has obviously taken a step forward in that direction. He doesn't shy away from it. He would like to engage with the BRICS and the powerful constituency that BRICS is evolving into, and he hopes to make use of it. So there is a bigger engagement on the political side. The second aspect is this, that I think from the point of view of an Indian, what is interesting is that Mr. Modi's campaign was primarily focused on domestic issues.
Right.
He hardly said anything about foreign affairs. And also, after the government was formed, naturally, a lot of attention was paid to neighborhood policies.
Right.
But beyond that, you know, we have, for the first time, let me put it this way, Mr. Modi is wading into world politics.
Right.
So that is an episode of immense curiosity, as far as I am concerned, as an Indian intellectual.
Not just in India, but I'm sure across the world also.
Of course, of course.
That, you know,
of course.
Mohan, would you agree with him that, you know, he's going to, you know, he's going to use BRICS as a political forum, not just as an economic forum, which Dr. Manmohan Singh was tending to do?
Yes, largely I would agree with Kumar on this. But, you know, it doesn't matter who the Prime Minister is. The stature of India depends on India itself. And India today is the world's 3rd largest economy. So, you know, to say that, you know, Mr. Modi is now looking for a place to earn a stature in world stage is not correct. It goes with the job, and he's the Prime Minister of India, and that is good enough for the world. Okay, now, as far as the curiosity factor is concerned, that, you know, he has not said anything of what he thinks of world architecture, particularly the economic architecture. The BRIC originally was an economic grouping. It was the next 4 countries after the G7. And the acronym was coined by an economist at Goldman Sachs, Lehrer, who said that, this is the next 4 countries will be the BRIC countries. South Africa only came in 2011 to give it a geographical spread. But still the struggle for control of the economic system of the world is still underway. Right. Because it is completely dominated now by the G7, who set the agenda, who then implement the agenda, and pretty much, and they've got the sword arm is with NATO. They control the Security Council. So they're pretty much in control of the whole world system. So BRIC, as far as the Chinese BRICS and Russians are concerned, BRICS was meant to challenge that hegemony.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we have to see what is the first step towards that is setting up of the development bank as an alternative to the World Bank. And the Chinese have proposed something very interesting. They are proposing that we trade in our own currencies, the currency swap. Now, Brazil and China are already doing that. Russia and China are going to do that. Now, India has been holding out on that, and I see no reason why India should hold out. Actually, this will probably force the Chinese then to balance trade with us. Because as long as we are giving them dollars, they'll pile on the dollars.
Right.
But they can't pile on the rupees.
Right.
So I think, it's time we also moved in on this. Get out of the dollar dependency of the economy and then move on to alternate forms of, managing our affairs.
We will come to that aspect a little later. Professor Ghoshal, political aspect of this, how important is it? And do you think that the BRICS nations will be able to politically take on, as Mohan was pointing out, the G7 countries, especially in the context of what's happening around the world? How important will BRICS stand on various issues matter?
I think, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think Mr. Modi is going to make much of a high-profile presence there. His main objective would be to actually acquaint himself with the other leaders, socialize with them, because he's not a known element, particularly to the other countries, as Dr. Manmohan Singh was.
Right.
So I think he would take a fairly low-profile kind of an attitude in this, try to understand what is going on. Obviously, he would pay much attention to the political aspect of this BRICS. What shape is it going to take? But even in that, I don't think he's going to, at the moment, I don't think he can offer anything new as such, except what Ambassador Bhadra had mentioned, that obviously he will be concerned about, like other countries, the security and other issues that are, confronting the world at this moment. But I think from my point of view, the visit is important, not so much what he's going to talk about the BRICS as such, but more important is his meeting on the sidelines.
Right. The bilateral meetings.
Particularly his meeting with Xi Jinping, the most powerful person in this century, and as well as, the most important leader that has emerged in China. And I think Modi has to know what he really is trying to do. And also in terms of, not only in terms of, what is happening in BRICS as such, but I think he would also have to deal with Xi Jinping in terms of India's relationship with China. And on the one hand, you see that there is a certain element of an uneasiness in the minds of many people about China's assertive diplomacy in this region. But at the same time, because of this, the conflict between China and Japan, China is also in a mood to woo India, because I think China doesn't feel India as a threat or anything of that sort. I think China gets concerned only when it finds that India is in league with another country like United States or Japan. So I think both will try to weigh each other in this meeting, and it will be good if we can get some assurance in terms of our own security concerns vis-a-vis China.
Okay, Pramit, how do you think the other countries will view India? How do you think the other countries, other BRIC countries will view India if what, as Mr. Bhadra says, India is going to take a more assertive, more active, or wants to take a more active role in the world affairs, and use BRICS as a political forum?
Well, I think the first interest most of these governments will have is to get a sense of the new Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. They'll be looking to see whether India can pick up its economy, which at present has ensured that it doesn't really have much standing with a lot of these countries. I would argue that no, Modi is probably not all that excited about BRICS. He is much more domestically oriented. He is much more interested in things that can help him rebuild and restarted the Indian domestic economy. So yes, China is important in that, but Brazil and Russia are not, and South Africa is least of all. So therefore,
Pramit, one second. Pramit, 1 second.
An important multilateral engagement.
Pramit, yes. 1 second. Pramit, how do you look at this statement when his statement before he left? I look at the BRICS summit as an opportunity to discuss with BRICS partners how we can contribute to international efforts to address regional crises, address security threats, and restore a climate of peace and stability in the world. Don't you see this statement as his keenness to play a more active role?
Every BRICS summit, every Indian Prime Minister makes exactly the same statement. I have gone to 3 of these summits, and on the plane ride back, the Indian Prime Ministers and their aides spend a lot of time saying, well, don't really worry about the BRICS. The issue is the bilateral meetings, as Dr. Ghoshal has mentioned, are of much more importance, especially the meetings. Normally the Chinese leader, obviously, is by far the only real news peg you get every time you go, and sometimes the Russian leader. This BRICS summit will be interesting because it really will mark the return of Russia. Because until now, after the first few summits, Russia really lost interest and didn't really contribute very much. After the Ukraine crisis, Putin is now much more interested in making something out of the BRICS. On the other hand, Brazil, given the domestic crises that Dilma Rousseff is facing, is probably less interested in being able to get very much done. China, of course, is there, but China's interest, you have to realize, because it is the largest, by far the largest BRICS power, it is larger than, in fact, all of the others put together as far as its economy is concerned. BRICS is only one among many interests that it has. And therefore, it is interested in allowing BRICS to develop, but it's not prepared to invest too much, especially given its interests with other organizations and institutions in the world. The Chinese are also conscious of the fact that because they are so much more powerful than all of the others, that the more they push hard, then less and less willing and more suspicious the other BRICS members will be, with probably the exception of South Africa, about what China is actually trying to do.
Okay. Mr. Bhadra Kumar, interesting, that all of you have a little different views on all these things. So, would you agree with all the other panelists that these bilateral meetings would be more important than multilateral meetings? And what about the bank, the development bank? They're expecting that the announcement is going to be made. And how important is it going to be?
You see, on the sidelines of any multilateral process, there is scope for highly beneficial bilateral interactions. BRICS is not an exception. But I think it would be looking at it the wrong way to say that the bilateral processes are more important than the BRIC process. The fact that, a bank is taking shape, and in fact, the significance of the fund, the pooling of
about $100 billion is going to be this.
And which is a step forward. In terms of it is in fact challenging the financial institutions, the architecture, the prevailing architecture. Secondly, over-dollaring. It is challenging over-dollaring. So these are hugely political. There is no doubt about it. By 2015, next year, 30% of all trade for China is going to be in its own currency. And I think the fact that the bank is going to be headquartered in Shanghai, as I understand from the Russian press.
Delhi is also claiming for it.
No, I think it has been settled.
It has been
this
settled.
is according to the Russian media at least. Shows that China is taking a very big interest in this. You see, from the Chinese point of view, Chinese diplomacy works very effectively in tapping into multilateral processes and developing it on a parallel track to their bilateral processes. And they develop a lot of synergy. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the platforms with ASEAN is happening all over the place. And BRICS, they are doing the same thing. Alongside, they are also developing Latin America. China is increasing its profile in a very big way, its engagement in a very big way. So I think it is wrong to underestimate the significance of what is taking place. Certainly, Russia has come to the global stage in a very big way. Certainly, there is a certain new level of correlation of forces in international politics. But what I find is that there is a very intensive coordination between Russia and China now with regard to BRICS. For example, we didn't notice it here because it has not been reported in our media. Just 48 hours before the summit, when Putin left for Latin America, he deputed a very key figure in the Russian foreign policy and security policy making, that is Sergei Ivanov, to go to China. And to my surprise, he was received by President himself, Chinese President himself, who was going to meet in another 3 days, Putin. So you see the extent of coordination and the statements emanating from Moscow and the briefings given from China, you could see that there is a lot of coordination taking place. So now we are at the threshold of something different. And if you look at BRICS in the same old lackadaisical way that we've been used to for 5 years, I think we'll be making a serious mistake.
We'll be making a mistake. You think we'll be making... Mohan, would you agree with that? That, the BRICS, as we have known as, this is the 6th summit, the past 3-4 summits, Pramit may be right that, that in the past, Indians didn't take it so seriously. Now, will we be forced to take it seriously?
Not forced to. It's in our interest to take it seriously.
It's in our own interest.
It's in our interest, and we should do it.
Yes.
Because there's no point putting all your eggs in one basket. We've seen what comes out of too much of reliance on the West. There's a relentless pressure all the time to acquiesce on all areas. And I think...
With the US, you mean?
With the US, I think this allows you to retain a good degree of your autonomy. And I think, we have major trade relations with China. Also, we have a political relationship with Russia, which has languished a bit. And I think this is a chance to pick it all up now, because things are moving very rapidly. You're seeing what's happening in the Middle East. You're seeing what's happening in the international currency markets. And I think, and we're out of it, out of the action completely.
Right.
And therefore, BRICS gives you a forum to get back into this and, make our presence felt. And I think prime ministers will pick up that opportunity. And knowing him, he was not going to be someone who's going to let this chance go.
It's Mr. Bhadra Kumar, this whole business of what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Iraq, you think these are issues which will also figure in the multilateral meetings?
Of course, I am sure it's a matter of great disquiet for India, this business of the caliphate. Whether it's real, phony, whether it's enduring is a different matter. There is a certain kind of radicalization.
The fact that a lot of Shias from India wants to go and fight
yes, there is a certain...
We are getting directly involved.
The point is, as we have seen in the case of Afghanistan, these happenings, they radiate negative energy.
Right.
And India happens to be in the vicinity. And I'm sure that this sense of disquiet is there in the mind of our leaders.
Right.
And, this is something which we share now with China, with Russia, these two countries in particular. And I think, therefore, it is extremely significant. These things are not done, I think, just like that, looking back at what Mohan Singh said or somebody said and then draft the statement for Narendra Modi like that. The fact is that it has been brought up front, that I, in first person, speaks about it, that I am going to discuss these security issues.
Right.
I think it must be taken seriously.
Professor Ghoshal, would you agree with, because your earlier argument is that it may not be so, he may not take such a positive,
I think I'll argue for two different things. One, of course, is that security and other issues are important. But at the same time, we have to also see that whether our interests converge with the interest of certain other countries. If you look at the interest of Russia and China, there is a definite convergence in sort of kind of an anti-Western kind of an approach towards them. Both have their reasons for it, and particularly for Russia, there are reasons. And I found, in my last visit to Moscow, where I was a visiting professor, I wanted to teach a different course, but they recommended that I teach a course on BRICS. Unusual kind of sort of an interest in BRICS, essentially because I think Russia has a kind of a wounded feeling vis-a-vis the West. And that's why they want to sort of, try to present a kind of a different, alternative kind of a thing. Now, in that kind of an anti-Western kind of a stance that China and Russia might take, we have a lot of sort of common in that interest. But at the same time, whether we would like to identify ourselves politically with a kind of a group which really talks openly against the West. Now, in this kind of a design of creating an anti-Western kind of a thing, an alternative to IMF and World Bank. Now, if that kind of a sort of design harms our interest in some way or the other,
will it harm?
We have to. It may.
It may
because China may be trying to sort of have its own.
Use India.
You see, for example, the kind of suggestions that China has for Asian security. India doesn't have much role in that. Asian architecture that China talks about. Then at one time, China talked about an Asian Infrastructure Development Bank to rival with Japan's ADB. Now, if China takes a political stand again on kind of a sort of aid for infrastructure development, as it took a couple of years back on the question of our aid in Arunachal Pradesh, obviously that would not support our interest. But one point I would like to say is that instead of looking at it only from a political perspective, we forget that there is a lot of activities that are taking place, other than the summits. Summits are only a kind of an expression of leaders' intent.
What are the other
But for example, in February, there was a big meeting on science and technology between the countries, the representatives of the ministers of these countries. There was also an economic meet in March. There was a foreign ministers meet at the end of March. And then there was also a meet on population control. Look at the population problem, migration, and a whole lot of other issues. On energy issues, the committees are meeting between the countries. So what I'm trying to suggest is that instead of looking at BRICS only on the political point of view, let us also talk about the other forms of cooperation that can promote economic, political, scientific, and other kinds of cooperation.
Yes, Mohan.
I think to say that, suggest that our interests don't converge is also not correct, because at this moment, with the crisis...
You mean his point that, Russia and China's...
No, at this point, with the Middle East in the crisis,
right,
with oil prices on the rise, every $1 increase in oil prices costs us $1 billion. And China and India are the world's number 1 and 2 importers of oil now.
Right.
We import $190 billion worth of oil every year. And if this oil keeps going up, then we're in trouble. And therefore we have an interest in what is happening in the region. And to a large extent, we would like to have seen stability there. What we've seen in Libya, what we've seen in Syria, what we've seen in Iraq, all should cause us a lot of disconcert. But in the sense that, therefore, to some extent, Chinese and Indian interests converge on the question of oil stability. And the US, being a largely self-reliant oil nation, Europe is also largely self-reliant, they don't seem to be concerned about the effects
of what's happening.
What would happen to other countries.
Yes, I'll come to you, Mr. Bhadra.
Just 2 points. One is I want to introduce this, that, that Indian media has not picked it up, but an announcement has been made in Moscow that Putin is going to take a major initiative to have an energy association as part of the BRICS process.
Right.
Now, this is hugely important for India.
Yes.
Now, along with this, this currency, swapping and all that, which is in the pipeline, this completely changes whatever it be the Russian motivation. to challenge the dollar in oil trade, whatever it is, or to diversify away from the European market. The point is we are directly a beneficiary.
Right.
And at a time, as has been mentioned, this market is in turmoil. Okay. And the second point I want to mention is this, that I think it is wrong to look at BRICS as anti-West. Now, the point is, the best evidence of it is this very, very important speech that Chinese president made during the strategic dialogue in Beijing with the US. He said that a confrontation, as from the Chinese point of view, a confrontation with the United States will be catastrophic.
Absolutely.
Now, for both Russia and China, the relationship with the United States is no less important than it is for India.
Absolutely. Yes, very quickly, Ghoshal, before I go to...
I didn't really say that our interests do not converge with China.
But
what I suggested that it converges. I mean, there is a convergence of interest with China, but there are also other areas where our interests may not converge.
May not
converge. So that's where we should not
we should be a little more cautious, you say.
We should be cautious in terms of, going whole hog to sort of promote it as a kind of an organization.
Pramit, would you agree with the other panelists here that, BRICS may not have been so important for India in the past, but now, India can just cannot ignore it, and it would be in its own interest to take it more seriously.
Let's put it this way. It's a perfect hedging strategy. You don't know whether BRICS is going to become important in the next 10 years. It may go absolutely nowhere. I think a lot of what we're talking about right now, about oil markets and stuff, is peripheral. It may not necessarily be a problem even 6 months down the line. And I don't really see us working very closely with the Chinese on energy. We've tried it before, and the Chinese have been completely disinterested. The real point is that we will invest in the BRICS as far as it is possible to do so, because we're not certain whether or not BRICS will become important. We'll also try to invest a little, perhaps even less, in IPSA, in the non-line movement, in all of these organizations, just on the off chance that they will become important sometime later, or because they will be able to fulfill a certain policy requirement sometime in the future.
Okay. But very quickly, Mr. Bhadra Kumar, very quick last words
in
to you.
In terms of actual concrete policy, doesn't have all that much.
Okay, Pramit, very quickly.
I think the context of the visit is very important. That in September there is there are two meetings, important meetings. One is Chinese president coming, and also Mr. Modi going to the US.
Right.
And this
and also to Japan later.
Yes, this is this becomes a very big dress rehearsal. In a way.
Okay, I think on that note we need to end. Completely run out of time. Dress rehearsal for Modi, and also BRICS becoming more important than what it was earlier. These are all very interesting developments. We'll get to know in the next 2 days what will emerge out of these meetings. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Bhadra Kumar, Mohan, Guruswamy, Baladas, Ghoshal, and Pramit Chaudhary. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture, same time tomorrow.